Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Administration and Operations Committee meeting for October 17th. We thank everybody for joining us this morning. As far as attendance, Councillor Chambers is not here as yet, but we have not heard that he won't be here, so we will just wait his arrival. For everybody that's joined us in the audience today, thank you very much for joining, and I think we've got a few online as well. So we'll get right at it. We've got a bit of an agenda today. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing nothing, can I get approval for the agenda? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Kyle, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, if there's any right now, let us know. If any arise through the meeting, please note it at that time. Delegations. We've got a few delegations today. I know we've got a number of folks on from the city of Brantford. I'm not sure, we've got the report that we were all given and read the report. I'm not sure if the city wants to make any comments on the report at all or just answer questions that may arise from the report. I'm not sure what their plan is on that. So who do we have on from the city? They're on Zoom. We cannot hear you. If you're speaking, we're still unable to hear you. We did a test with them earlier, right?
I didn't get everybody on the test.
Sorry, folks. Okay, we got a little technical difficulty here. Bear with us. We cannot hear you if you're speaking. Gary. Potentially muted out on one of the laptops or on the main switch. Sorry. Mayor Bailey?
Mr. Chair, can we move on and come back to them?
But we can, Mr. Mayor, but it's going to be tough if there's questions for them to respond to questions with no audio. Can we try leaving the Zoom and coming back? You can see them talking, but we can't hear them. Who did you said you...
Becky, if you're in the room, we had sound with you.
If Becky is in the room, if she can come off mute, we did have sound check with her earlier.
That's what you get for $11 million. We should go there.
Something's up. Sorry, just bear with us here, folks. We're having some technical difficulties. Councillor Bell, you were on Zoom there earlier. Can somebody else on Zoom just do a test? Come off of mute and speak, please. Anybody else that's in through the Zoom?
Karen is muted.
Karen, you're muted. No.
Still muted.
Are all the folks on there from the city? All the different people?
Yeah.
You want me to try to look on?
Please. Great way to start the day, isn't it? No, we still can't hear you. Just stand by. We're going to do a test with somebody here.
No, I can hear them.
And you might find you get feedback. So
Can you hear me?
No, I just hear you there.
Yeah, now you can hear me.
Okay.
I'm doing my best.
Okay. Can we have the city try one more time? Get out of there. From the room? You're on mute, actually.
Check 1, 2, 3,
There
check
we
1.
go. Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
So, welcome everybody this morning to, anyway, we won't go through that again. Yeah, so for the folks from the city, we're just wondering, did you have anything to say about the report? Did you want to say anything about the report, or just answer any questions that have arisen from it?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Brian Hutchings, CEO, and I'm here with Director of Housing Services, Mary Musson, as well as Aaron Wallace, our Director of Family Support and Children's Services, as well as our Treasurer, Joelle Daniels, and our Manager of Children's Services, Michelle O'Connor. So, yeah, we have a presentation, if you like. We weren't sure we're listed on our presentations. We also just can answer questions. It's your choice, Mr. Chair.
Hey, if you have a quick presentation, go ahead.
I think quick is the operative word, Mr. Chair. So I'll try to make it as quickly as I can. But do you have does somebody have a presentation, or do they have it?
I can flip it to them really quickly.
Or do we put it up on our screen? Share screen?
We can try and share screen. I can do that.
Okay. We're just going to put it up on our screen if we're allowed to share a screen, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You should be able to share.
Here we go.
I'll be 2 more seconds here. Screen sharing.
Can you see that?
We can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about the delay up front. I've introduced everybody in the room, and we have some managers online as well. Slide 2. Mary can get to slide 2 if we're going to introduce our operating budget, Mr. Chair. At first, before the capital budgets, you can see on slide 3 our cost shared services. Committee is aware that the budget of services the city delivers on behalf of the city and county includes housing and homelessness, social assistance, and oversight of licensed childcare and early on programs. Cities provincially appoint a consolidated municipal service manager for these areas, and staff are diligent to ensure families across the region, both Branch and the city of Brantford, have access to high quality programs and services. In children's service, 25% of the childcare spaces and 28% of the early on programs are located in the county, with childcare investment in the county increasing from $1.8 million in 2020 to over $4 million in 2023, with more investment coming across the region as we continue to implement the $10 per day childcare program. In addition to our Ontario Works office in Brantford, we offer service to the Cowan Healthcare Hub with over 250 individuals in the county who receive social assistance and continue to prioritize digital and virtual services such as transitioning to electronic documents. We've also made progress expanding housing and homeless supports for citizens in the city and the county with new housing developments such as the 174 Trillium Wave Project and initiatives such as the Housing Stability Worker Pilot Program that's going on in the county with the city bylaw and encampment outreach program. So those are some of our services. The 2024 initiatives we're looking at. We're working with the Ministry of Education, the local childcare providers, and the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program, which is really important for both the county and the city for our future leaders in this area. We're also excited to launching in Canesville early on, which will be located within the Canesville Community Center, offering early ons. Has been successful in other community locations such as sports centers and churches. We continue to locate creative partnerships with the city and the county. That'll be great down in Canesville. We serve a diverse, vibrant population. We continue to work closely with Six Nations Lansdowne Children's Center and Brantford Immigration Partnership. In the coming year, we'll move to our new Ontario office, a works office in the Beckett building, and we'll expand our partnerships with the Cowan Healthcare Hub, which we anticipate will include ODSP and St. Leonard's to begin providing services in the fall. And as mentioned earlier, detailed in this morning's agenda, staff are planning to implement an electronic management system. In the housing side, we'll be implementing a housing stability worker program pilot launched in Q2. The program evaluations planned in Q1. We're increasing housing stability work in tandem with property management, municipal and affordable housing sites. The next initiative we're looking at is also the housing bylaw and camp. I mentioned and point in time completed was done in April 26, as well as ongoing development of Lucy Marco Place, 174 Trillium Way, already mentioned, we'll be expanding 54 beds at Lucy Marco Place, as well as 174 Trillium Way. So, Mr. Chair, the challenges we're facing, next slide, Mary, we were looking at this uncertainty in ministry funding changes. As committee heard, and as Councillor Miller asked for, some of the Ontario Works funding has been frozen since 2018. Our administrative costs, which has led to about $400,000 to $600,000 in the county and the city picking up. Similar to all service managers of the province, we face uncertainty in regards to provincial funding formula change, especially in our children's services area, and I just mentioned Ontario Works. We also have greater funding for capital housing that has become increasingly difficult to secure. And we spent the most of the summer, I'll tell you, it wasn't a very fun summer, using a housing accessibility fund. Mary and myself and a bunch of others spending most of the summer doing that for the federal government. We're still waiting to hear that those monies will come in, but sounds lots of talk at upper levels with money for housing, but it certainly is, it's tough to find it making its way down the lower level. As committee is aware, your committee is aware, our clients are experiencing significant challenges. This is really important paragraph, Mr. Chair, related to increased housing costs, mental health, and addictions. Transitioning these clients to permanent housing, wellness, and employment requires intensive and often lengthy case management. Case management haven't seen in years, resulting in a larger social services caseload. I keep saying to myself, makes no sense. Unemployment is hardly, unemployment rate is the lowest in the province, but our caseload's up. It's because clients are staying longer in the caseload. Next slide. So with that point, we see the Ontario Works caseload, how it slowly crept up over this time. And next slide, we see the unique children on child care wait list. Those numbers are going up. Our child care wait list, approximately 20% of children on wait list live in the county Brant, which is 265 children and on the 2023 wait list. Next slide. This is always a slide that gets lots of attention, Mr. Chair, and I'll wrap up in a few more slides. That's the centralized housing wait list. It's at 975. It was reported higher. We've done a very good job in moving people into RGI units on housing. Almost 1,000 people have 1,100 people have attained RGI housing. The numbers are going down. We're increasing our caseload, sorry, our amount of units we're building. We've done a very good job in this region. Many regions talk about it. We are actually delivering on it. And so we built units at Marlene Avenue, at Sturton. We recently built the ones at 177 Coburn, and as well as the ones that mentioned Trillium Way and Lucy Marco, and as well as Mary's put in a great program working with people from emergency shelters right through the system and moving them on into affordable housing. So next slide. It's a point in time count. You can see we do a point in time count one day every single year. We interview people, go out and interview people on the streets and where they're living rough. And you can see our caseload is up about 5%. This will directly impact, next slide, Mary. When we look at our shelters, we're 3 or 4 shelter providers in the city, provide shelters for people in the county, but they're located in the city, as well as the people from 6 Nations. And you can see where that slowly crept up, and we're almost in the winter months close to our capacity. And we're just doing an evaluation of that right now, looking at another, I think it's 17 beds or something there we possibly need. Next slide. So this is, here we are at a budget estimates or budget meeting. This is what we're looking at. Family and Income Stability and Aaron's group are looking at a couple more case managers because the caseload is going up, a 2.69% increase. Housing's up approximately 4.61%. Our homelessness services, this should be no surprise, 26%, for an overall budget increase of 4.83%. And then down below is the allocation based on funding formula between the basic population between the county and the city, the allocation. Next slide. Next slides are mainly about capital, Mr. Chair. We just wanted to quickly take you through this very quickly. We're looking at investing, and we'll bring forth a report in December of this year to the Social Service Committee about capital investment in housing. This is what we're looking at investing right now with various funding sources. We're looking at from third party to tax reserves to debt at this moment, and increasing our repairs, but also the next slide will show 2 affordable housing projects. Next slide. So right now I mentioned Marlene Avenue, Sturton Avenue we've done, 170 Colbert Street we've done, Trillium Way in Paris, I've mentioned 3 times now, is well underway. Lucy Mark will be next. After that, we have a project slated for Sheller Lane. We do want to have discussions with your staff about possible sites in the county. That'll be after Sheller Lane. And then we will be looking at spots in the city as well as spots in the county as well for more housing units. In both trying to get to our 506 total units. As Councillor Bell has asked numerous times of Social Service Committee, we don't mention this presentation, but we're looking at 337 units as well being built by the not-for-profit sector as well. And we're working with a couple of not-for-profit providers now, and we're actually looking at that mix, Councillor Bell, for your comments in the last meeting. See if we should do 506 or the not-for-profit sector can do more or less, that sort of stuff. We really just want to make sure the units are in the community, not necessarily who owns them. So, next slide. So that's the challenges in this area, as we all know, no stranger to this area anywhere else in the province. Construction labor costs for new development continue to increase. I've already mentioned this, grant funding from other levels of government is unpredictable. And strict timelines for application and crazy cost sharing formulas, to be honest with you, very difficult. And building repairs and maintenance continue to increase with the age of buildings. I think that's the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair. I've talked as fast as I could and open the floor if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll open it up to committee for any questions. Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Hutchings. I wanted to shine a bit of a spotlight on one of your comments. This is more for the benefit of people who may watch this video later, and it was a lot of information to digest, and yes, you presented it quickly, which we appreciate. But you mentioned, and I remember learning this on the Social Services Committee, that provincial funding for social services is frozen at 2018 levels. So we haven't seen an increase from 5 years ago. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that, because that's a rough piece of information to absorb and frustrating, and probably something that most residents of both of our communities are not aware of. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little further and clarify if there's any steps that we can take, any appeal process to try and move that funding to a level that represents the needs of today.
Absolutely. Through the chair, I'm Aaron Wallace. I'm Director of Community Strategies and Family Supports, and the Ontario Works program is within my portfolio. So just some high-level context for committee. Around 2018, the province started to make what they called modernization or transformation efforts. And the core of that was a couple of things. It was for the province themselves to do the intake for the client, and for the nonprofit employment counselors to take the employment counseling work. So think your St. Leonard's, your career links, those types of things. In order to fund that, what the province did was froze the administration funding at 2018 and also removed some pieces of funding related to employment services, addiction services, that type of thing, to put it with the nonprofits. So what has happened is 2 things. One is that, so any increase in terms of contractual increase or inflationary or any other costs of doing business, those now become municipal costs shared by the city and the county, because the provincial component is frozen. If salaries go up by 2% a year, that all becomes additional municipal costs. The other challenge has been that although the province is doing, I think, very diligent and thoughtful work about doing the pieces that they committed to doing, we still absorb a lot of that work. So it wasn't a matter of just, here's the money we have, we'll make reductions where necessary. The local office still does a lot of the work that the province is intending to take on. And the third component of that is the caseload is increasing. So the caseload is projected to go up by about 20% in the next couple of years. And the clients are different now than they would have been 10 or 12 years ago, as our CIO indicated, presenting much more with housing challenges, mental health and addictions challenges, those types of things. So you can see the vice pinching from 3 different places. One is the province has frozen the funding. One is that the caseload is going up, and one is that the province is not doing in entirety the work that they intend to do by taking these pieces of work away. So for members of the public, what that means is we continue to try to serve our clients the best that we can, keep the municipal cost increases moderate and modest the best we can, but there is essentially no place to run with this budget. We have to serve the folks that walk through our front door, make sure that we can support them with the challenges they have, but any increase to the budget does land on the municipal taxpayer.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other questions from committee? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions, if I may, on capital budget. And it may be that I'm crossing in the border to our report later in the meeting, but in that report it says that the county is paying 9.45 million of the 15 million for the Trillium Way addition. Can somebody tell me who or what pays the balance?
So, to Councillor Bell's question, I believe do you know the answer to this? I believe it was 12.5 million the county was paying towards this project, and that was the total project cost. I'm not sure, I don't have the report you're referring to. I don't have access to that report.
I cannot, sorry, yeah, you may be at a loss here, Brian, I apologise for that, but it's in a report that's coming later which basically asks us to adopt the social services budget, and so I'll hold it over to that discussion. My second question I'm sure you will be able to answer, it's clear that the cost per unit for RGI housing has gone up. I think it's gone up to $300,000 per unit from 215 in the last 3 years. And at the same time, Bill 23 has removed our ability to use development charges for this part of our business. What's the impact to the Mayor's task force funding because of these two items? And what can we expect to see as additional calls on funding for the county?
Great question, Councillor Bell. We're working on a report as we speak. It's just working with Mary and Joelle on that now, bringing the Social Service Committee in December. So I'm a little early on it, but I will give you as long as you don't hold, I'll be close, but don't. The numbers, yes, they are going up towards about $300,000 a unit to produce with inflation and construction costs. Yes, you're absolutely correct there. We haven't seen the grants that I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we're expecting the federal and provincial governments. Yes, Bill 23 took almost $42 to $45 million away from the city and development charges that we had allocated towards affordable housing. So that would have basically paid for the affordable housing plan with some grants and things like that. The remainder of the 300 units we need to build, as well as some other supports. So it will be, the report will show the increase in the monies needed, which probably go from almost 100 to 100, close to probably 130 million, the less grants, as well as the reduction in the 42 million. So I'll be honest with you, I almost hit a brick wall when it comes to affordable housing. We're trying to figure out how we're going to fund that and bring that for the report in December, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Councillor Garneau.
Thank you. Through the chair, hearing that caseload is up and more complex, looking into eligibility factors, I'm on page 75 of 86 in the report. Is it okay to ask that question now?
Go ahead, yeah.
So there is figure 1 that shows household income limits as eligibility for housing. Do we know whether that is all sources of income that a household might have or just the income that's taxable?
Through the chair, it's Mary Musson, Director of Housing and Homelessness Services for the City of Brantford. The household income limits, so the actual income limits would be prescribed by the Housing Services Act, so it would be net taxable income. However, it would also take into account any RSPs that are not locked in and other sources of income that a household might come into.
So, thank you. If I can just quickly follow up, would that also include then, say, benefits from other levels of government, child support payments that aren't ordinarily taxed by the recipient?
So through the chair, it depends on the source of income. So social assistance recipients, the household income limits are applied differently for social assistance recipients. Also same for recipients of various types of benefit income. So someone who is in receipt of the Canada Pension Plan or Old Age Security, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, those are treated differently under the Housing Services Act. But overall, the household income limits, yes, it would be the taxable income.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll say that social services it's a tough portfolio. It's growing. It's getting more complex. So overall, in my opinion, I think anything under 5% is a very decent budget, and I want to commend the staff for doing that. I do want to drill down on a couple line items under housing. In the report we have in front of us, I believe it was the exact same report we've seen at social services. So hopefully you guys have some of that in front of you so you can see what I'm referring to. But I want to talk.
Same report.
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
It's the same report, yes, same report.
That's what I thought. So in our package, it's on page 130, but in the social services budget report, it's page 42, where we talk about the operating expenses of housing. Just a couple questions. The overall housing budget come in at 4.6%, and like I say, I think that's pretty good. Labor costs show quite a big increase, 11.18%. I wanted to ask, is there any new hiring for the housing department that reflects in those labor costs?
So through the chair, there was some increased hiring that was passed through the Human Resources Committee in 2023. I believe it was in Q2 2023. We did receive approval to increase complement. So we have, instead of 2 housing program coordinators who are accepting the applications for community housing and processing the eligibility, we have increased complement to 3. We have also increased complement to our front-end customer service staff. So we have increased from 1 housing services administrative role to 2. And we have increased a non-union complement by increasing an administrative program coordinator. All of this is being paid through grant funding from the Homelessness Prevention Program, so there is no impact to the municipal tax levies for these positions, but we are increasing complement. We are also piloting the program, so as the CAO has mentioned, the Housing Stability Worker Program has increased our complement temporarily until March 31st of 2024 by 4 staff people. And we are also piloting an encampment process with our bylaws, so that increased our complement by 3 people until March 2024. And those are pilot programs that we will be reporting back on in Q1 of 2024.
So I think, Councillor, you'll see that the expense line go up, but so does the revenue line, so it nets itself out. And if you also remember, Councillor Mary's team brought forth on the Marlene Avenue, we were contracting that out, and we brought in a bunch of residents came in and talked about that, and decided not to contract out and do it internally as well. So that's also been a bit of a resource on our staffing versus a line that's contracted out, a line that's now a staffing line as well.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Chair. That's where I was going with this. The labor costs go up. There's hiring. Usually when we see hiring and labor costs go up, we see contracted services go down. But the contracted services and the expense, again, that's a huge change, almost 200%. So what are those contracted services then, and would they be better? What are they, and would they be better served in-house?
So through the chair, the contracted services, the majority are paid for out of the Homelessness Prevention Program, again, the provincial grant funding, as well as the Reaching Home, which is the federal funding that we receive. The contracted services are going up, especially now that we are getting through the request for proposals process for the emergency shelter system. Through the Social Services Committee, City Councillor Samuel had put forward a notice of motion back in April 2023 of this year for staff to do their due diligence and do a thorough review of the shelter system and the services that are being provided. So there are increased costs associated with ensuring that all the services are in place for supporting individuals experiencing homelessness in the county and the city. So those are the budget lines that we are looking at for the contracted services, and that report will be coming through to Social Services Committee in December 2023.
Okay, I appreciate the answer. And the last question, Mr. Chair. One thing I don't know what it is, hence the question, but internal payments, again, that's going up 15% to 329,000. Oh no, sorry, 2.5 million. So up another almost 330,000. Internal payments. When I see that, I'm assuming that goes to other city departments for work that they do for social services. Is that correct? And if that's correct, could you also explain why it's going up another 330,000?
So I'll start, and my team's scrambling for the papers. I'll buy them some time, and I don't dance very well because I get size 14 feet. But anyway, yes, the short answer is yes. That's for internal charges such as accounting work or finance work or internal lease, building and that sort of stuff. Just internal costs. So we're just trying to figure out the increase, explain the increase. So just give me a second here.
Yep, no worries.
Sorry, Councillor, it's Joelle Daniels, City Treasurer. We missed the very first part of your inquiry, and we're not sure which business unit you were looking in, if that was the housing business unit.
Yes.
The housing department that sees those internal payments increasing by $329,000. Is that what you were?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's Appendix B of the report.
Yes. So those internal payments are across the board through family and income stability, which is 2 pages before that, which you'll see a large decrease, as well as in homelessness, there's decreases as well. But all of those overall are internal payments to support services provided by other staff at the city.
Mary's got either more detail. Go ahead, Mary.
Yep, through the chair. So the additional cost too, we have seen a rise in internal payments, especially throughout 2023. We've been implementing additional security at all of our housing sites, and we do have a contracted third party to provide security services throughout the city. And so we have definitely realized an increase in those costs to ensure that the tenants and their neighbors remain safe. So we do have the security services 24/7.
That's contracted out through our internal security department, so that's why it's an internal charge.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, then contracted services have gone up, you said for security purposes, but also internal payments have also gone up for security purposes. Am I hearing correctly?
So through the chair, the contracted third party, that is an internal charge because the security services is an internal department, and however it is contracted out. So I know it's a hop, skip, and a jump to get there, but yes, it's an internal charge, and because we are providing enhanced security at our housing sites, those internal charges have gone up.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to see how well you guys know your stuff, so appreciate it.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, seeing none, my apologies to committee. It does state so on the agenda, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring 8.1 up to after this discussion here. It makes sense to move that up, and then the folks from the city can get on with their day if nobody is opposed to that. So no more questions on the presentation. I know we had some questions through that report. So we are going to bring 8.1 up, as I say. So if I could get a mover, somebody to put that on the floor, Mayor Bailey, Councillor McAlpine. Now, any further questions on that report? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps if I can get an answer to the question I asked earlier, which the city representative weren't able to answer at the time.
Heather, you're coming up to respond to that. Thank you.
Good morning. So you're asking about our contribution towards the capital components for our new builds?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, Heather. I think the report says the total commitment is 15.125 and the county is going to fund 9.45. And I was just interested in how the balance is being funded.
Yeah. So Schedule B of our shared servicing agreement on social services outlined that the county would be contributing to some new capital housing projects as well. One of those was obviously the Trillium Way piece, which was 9 point something was what was allocated for that. Another one that's referenced in the agreement is the Russell Heights Phase 2, which we haven't started with yet. So the funding for each of those will be coming forward to council. There have been past reports when we started Trillium Way suggesting that we would be funding part of that possibly from the Brant County Power Reserves. So those two pieces though, our contribution under the agreement suggests around the 15.125 million, but as Mr. Hutchings suggested, numbers have changed, and ours is based on, that was just an estimate based on 2020 values. So we will likely be looking at a higher contribution over the 10-year period of the agreement.
Councillor Bell?
If I may, Mr. Chair. I'm a little confused. I thought we were paying the whole costs of Trillium Way. Maybe my colleagues on social services can nod their heads or shake their heads there. So I'm not understanding why we're only paying 9 out of 15. Maybe it's good news.
Our commitment was for, out of the 479 units, that was part of the Mayor's Task Force report. We had committed to funding our proportional based on population piece of that. So that would be, but we're paying all of Trillium Way because that's our project. So all our money is going towards there. And when we do another project, probably Russell Heights, our money will be going towards that. A lot of the projects, if you look through the city's capital budget stuff, there's a lot of projects they're fully funding because we're fully funding Trillium Way and our projects in our community.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe I'm not being understood. I think it costs 15 million to do Trillium Way. Your report says we're funding 9.45. So there's a funding gap of 5.5 million. Is somebody else paying that? That's what I'm.
We did get a grant towards Trillium Way. And anything that's not covered in that grant will be fully funded through us. I'm not sure what the exact number for the Trillium Way project was once we went to tender, but it'll count towards that 15.125 million contribution. But as we said, based on numbers, we committed to helping with the number of units. So as the costs go up for those number of units, so will our expected contributions.
So it's a good news story then. So somewhere along the way, somebody's contributing $5 and a bit million towards Trillium Way.
Well, and I don't know how much money, Heather. I don't know if Heather has exact Trillium Way figures.
Yeah.
Heather Mifflin can have those numbers.
Yeah.
Heather?
To you, Mr. Chair. I think it's around 12 million actually. Budget, I think probably the city can provide us more definite numbers now that it's gone to tender, and we'll update that in our upcoming budget. But there was a grant component that maybe the city could speak to as to what the grant component was received after the fact.
We can answer that if you like. We have the budget here.
Please, if you would.
Okay, so the approved budget for the Trillium Way project is $12.5 million gross. We have received commitments for federal and provincial grants of just over $3 million, which is leaving a county contribution to the Trillium Way project of almost $9.5 million. So that's $9.5 million out of the $15.125 million that was committed through the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force report.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's a good news story.
There's
somebody contributing $3 million, which is good news. Just a follow-up to that, if I may.
Go ahead.
The question I asked of Brian about the longer-term impacts of Bill 23 and the increase in unit cost for each dwelling, I trust that we're going to reflect that in our long-term financial plan.
Yeah, and I suspect when that report goes to social services in December, based on our commitment to help with the number of units, that we will be looking at a request for more money than that 15.125 that we had originally put in the agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, we have a mover, we have a seconder. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is passed unanimously. Okay, so I appreciate that. Thanks to all the folks from the city for joining us this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for moving that up for us. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so thank you for that indulgence committee. We are going to step back now to delegations to 4.2. Chris Gannon? My apologies. For Brant Railway Heritage Society. State your name and address, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. You've got a presentation going up here, I understand. There we go. So whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Chris Gagan of Brantford, Ontario, and thank you for your time this morning to present to you on behalf of the Brant Railway Heritage Society. We last came before Council in 2019 and presented our plan for the restoration of the Mount Pleasant Station. And this morning I intend to provide you with an update of what we have done and what our ongoing plans are for the station itself. So for a little background since there's been some changes with council since the last time that we were here, I'll give you a brief overview of who we are and what we're all about. We formed in 2018 with a mandate to preserve the heritage and facilitate the education of railroading in Brant. We received our not-for-profit status through the Ontario Historical Society in 2019 and continue to acquire artifacts of railroad historical significance, including baggage carts, speeder cars, a railroad photo collections, signage, and most importantly in 2020, the station itself. We're not just a Mount Pleasant group, we represent all of Brant, but that's where we spend a lot of our focus because that's where the station itself is. So the Mount Pleasant Station, as seen in this 1978 photo, was built in 1916 for the Lake Erie Northern Railway. This was an electric railway that ran from Galt through to Port Dover. And when passenger service ended in 1955, the station remained on the right-of-way and eventually became used as a private residence. When all railway service ended in the 1980s, the station was acquired and moved to the Merritt Farm, which is where it currently resides. That property now is owned by a Guelph-based developer. There are very few stations that remain throughout the region. Many are probably familiar with the Grand Trunk Station, which is in Brantford, which is currently being used by Via Rail, and the TH&B Station, which is in downtown Brantford. That one is going to be currently part of a condo development being used as part of their lobby, and then the last one in our region is the Mount Pleasant one. Our intent for the station is to restore it, relocate, and reopen it as a museum. The museum will tell the story of our railway history throughout interactive displays, a model railroad, and various artifacts. We intend to dedicate space to highlight the local history of the village of Mount Pleasant and tell the human side of railroading through stories of people that worked and depended on the railway for mail, travel, business, and more. We intend to have space available for rentals, school tours, youth groups, and other occasions. And the main floor will be accessible for the public, and then the second floor will be used as an office and archive storage. So what have we been doing since 2019? Our primary focus has been stabilization and preservation. Much of that was delayed during the pandemic. We've worked with the organization Committe Engineering to develop a shoring plan and assess the structural integrity of the building. As you can see on the 2019 photo on the right-hand side, the building did develop a significant hole in the roof, which caused significant water damage to the waiting area, and that waiting area was deemed unsafe and had to come down. Before doing so, we removed and preserved all the eave brackets, windows, and architectural details. An example of that is the door to the waiting room still can faintly be seen on the outside saying waiting room, and that door has been saved as well. We had our charity status application put on hold, but this year we have restarted that application process. And we've been running various events and fundraisers to build awareness and also obviously help fund the program itself. This weekend, for anyone that might be interested, we have a book sale going on in Mount Pleasant at the Nature Park. We've also had various guest speaker events, including another one that's coming up in November, again, for anyone that's interested in attending. And we've also participated in the local model railway layout tour, an artisan tour, and just recently hosted the cemetery tours as part of the area's culture days. We've completed a detailed business plan and submitted that to the county through Kathy Ballantyne. So this gives you an idea of what our current timeline now looks like for the station and for bringing it back as a museum. Now, since we are back on track with things, the first project that we're working on this year is replacing the roof of the remaining sections, and then we're moving towards rebuilding some of the walls and rooms that have unfortunately been lost due to water damage, and then moving ourselves towards having a finished product that we can move to its new location. This here is some of the estimated costs of the project. Currently, it's exceeding $70,000 to be able to get the station looking like it did in this 1993 photo. To assist with the funding, we'll be looking at holding our artisan tour on a yearly basis. We've sold books about historic buildings in Mount Pleasant, received grants and donations from the Hagersville Catch the Ace, as well as the County Community Fund, which thank you for that. As well, we received offers of service from local businesses, including electrical, HVAC, excavating, and outdoor lighting. So some of the projects that would assist us if the county is able to help out, our plan is to hopefully continue with the original plan to move it to the Mount Pleasant Park, located on Birch Road. If you're not familiar with that park, it's just down the road from the windmill, which everyone I'm sure knows the windmill. And this would put it in close proximity to where it originally stood. To accomplish this, we have several requests. One of them is the continuation of the waiver of tipping fees at the Biggers Lane landfill. That's been a huge asset to our project since it was first started, and would continue to do so as we move from demolition into construction phases. The waiver of building permit fees as we move into the building phases in the coming years. This would help in the reduction of costs of the project. Building of washrooms on the site. As this building was built in 1916, it was not built with indoor plumbing in mind. So to address the current building code requirements for a public building, a shared washroom would not only benefit us, but it will also benefit other park users there. A trail diversion from the Lake Erie Northern Trail would assist park users to be able to learn more about the trail that they are using, since that was the former right-of-way. And in regards to hydro service hookup, we've met with Grand Bridge Energy, and their recommendation is for hydro service to be a split meter from the current hydro room at the park, running a line into the station, and that would be done through the county's electrical contractor, and any other site preparation that may be required once we get to that point. And that's the conclusion of my presentation, so if there's any questions.
Thank you for that. Questions from committee? Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to our delegation. Thank you for the information. In your delegation request form, you mentioned under the kind of what action would you like to see happen, you're suggesting to form an official partnership for the development of the museum, presumably between the group and the County of Brant. Can you speak a little bit more about what that looks like, or what it might look like?
Well, we certainly want to make sure that we have a formal partnership to be able to use your land, being the county park, and then have us having a nonprofit organization operating the museum on the county land.
Councillor House?
Sure, thank you. As a follow-up, I'm just wondering, as through this evaluation and considering options, I'm trying to determine whether this needs to be pointed towards the Parks Department, or whether it first needs to be pointed towards the Heritage Advisory Committee, because we have a Heritage Advisory Committee that advises council on matters related to heritage, which this falls into. So at some point, it might be appropriate for this type of request to head in that direction.
Start there.
Just a thought.
Nope, I would agree with that. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
How does committee want to proceed with this? Councillor Coleman.
Move to receive.
To receive. Mayor Bailey, second. Councillor House. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, and I agree with the move to receive. I would encourage the delegation to touch base with our Heritage Committee. I think that would be appropriate at some point, and at that committee, further discussions can happen as well.
Yep. Good call. Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what maybe Councillor House doesn't know is they have their own sort of association now, which has been very bumpy for the last couple of years, and it's been saved once again, but it was doing very well on its own, and then it got bumpy, and then it got saved, and there's a couple of people, players in the background that have interest in the project. So I think maybe what they could do, if you find it a friendly amendment, is to have them contact your group, but as a report, to let you know what they've already done, because there's a lot been done, and there's a lot of pieces that are moving right now. So it's not as if it's a new idea; it's an ongoing historic project championed by the people of Mount Pleasant. That's my suggestion.
No, thank you for that, but I think, Chris, you're seeing the direction here that, put yourself in front of the Heritage Committee with some sort of presentation as well, just to bring them up to speed as to where you are and where you've come.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got a mover and a seconder to receive. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we will move on to 4.3, which is Ray Sambrook's free stop sign at the Muir Line and New Durham Road. Ray, come on up. We could just state your name and address for the committee. Is it Ray? Sorry to interrupt you. Is the green light on that mic? If not, just push the button, please.
There you go.
There
Good
we go.
morning,
Thank
everybody. My name is Ray Sambrooks, and I live on New Durham Road, which is an extension of Harley Road. Well, I think the picture says 1,000 words, but anyway, I'd like to first thank Councillor Miller for coming out and having a chat with me about this. On Friday, August the 25th, a 3-axle heavy transport truck westbound on Harley Road, going onto New Durham Road, left skid marks of over 60 meters long between the low limit sign and the intersection with Baseline Road. There was another tractor trailer there that was negotiating the left turn from northbound Baseline Road to westbound New Durham Road. A collision could have been serious because the turning truck was carrying bulk compressed gas. The speeding tractor trailer had an unmarked white trailer, so couldn't identify who it was at all, but the photo says 1,000 words for me anyway. And the noise from the screeching tires was just incredible. Anyway, in order to undertake due diligence, the stop sign with a red flashing warning light is warranted westbound on Harley Road at the intersection of Muir and New Durham Road. If you're looking eastbound on Harley Road towards New Durham Village from the stop sign at Muir, there is a depression in the road that makes a smaller vehicle or a motorcycle clearly invisible. Given that most drivers roll the stop with barely a glance down Harley Road, the potential for a serious collision exists. Speeding and the increased traffic volume over the years is also a consideration in upgrading the status of this intersection. Making the intersection a two-way stop would be the most practical approach, as the majority of traffic moves to and from Muir Line, from and to New Durham Road, since vehicles, particularly heavy ones, can use the momentum traveling from eastbound New Durham Road to climb the hill on Muir Line. It's quite a steep hill. I don't know if anybody, some of you must know that, particularly in the winter, and the roads are really slippery. Anyway, this approach, though, could be confusing to some drivers, and a three-way stop may be safer. As well, an amber warning light on the top of the stop sign, southbound on Muir Line, may also be considered. The flashing red light on the top of the stop sign is not visible to drivers until they crest the top of the hill, approaching Harley Road, New Durham Road intersection. On 5 occasions over the past 20 years, I have personally been the first to arrive at scene of an accident at that intersection. Once, in the heat of summer, I spent almost 5 hours redirecting traffic under Orth Drive to reduce the risk of a collision in the intersection in the blind spot on the hill. In one case, a mother and a toddler were transported to hospital by ambulance from that location. On another occasion, I spent almost 3 hours in the dark and in the cold doing the same thing at the height of a snowstorm. In that instance, there was a steady stream of traffic southbound on Muir Line thanks to Google redirecting the traffic off the 403. In both cases, first responders were unaware of my presence on the back of the hill at Orth Drive until my wife went out and told them that I was there. I'm getting too old for that. So I'd like you to please consider what I've asked you for. And if there's any questions or comments, I'll be pleased to answer them if I can.
Okay, thank you for that. So just for my clarification, if I could, so you're talking a stop sign, because I'm very familiar with that area because my in-laws live in Norwich. So you're talking on New Durham Road where Muir comes in, you're talking to have an additional stop sign on New Durham Road?
Yes.
So you'd come off a baseline at the stop sign and you would turn east on New Durham and there'd be another stop sign?
No, the issue here is where Muir Line comes down to the stop.
Right, yep.
And
Right
you've
by the
got
cemetery.
Harley Road at the cemetery. We live right next to the cemetery.
Okay,
Harley Road comes to Muir Line.
yep,
And Harley Road becomes New Durham Road. It's
Right.
the same road.
Right.
The stop sign needs to be on the Harley Road side of the intersection. So it's westbound Harley Road. When you come out of Harley, you come around the curve.
yep,
And then you come to Muir Line. It's right at that intersection where the stop sign needs to be.
okay, so you're just talking a stop sign heading
Correct.
that direction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there is another intersection that's set up like that. It's a coal line. That's in. I can't remember the name of the place now. It's gone.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to just clarify for myself.
But there is a precedent set where you can have a two-way stop, not a three-way stop.
Okay.
And the advantage of having a two-way rather than a three-way is when you've got heavy vehicles that are making the turn to go up Muir Line, that's quite a steep hill.
Mhm.
And in the wintertime, they wouldn't get up if there was a stop sign there.
Okay, thank you. Questions from committee? Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, just because this is usually our process, and usually the question we ask when we have delegations come in regards to road safety. Have you gone through the Brent Safe Streets process with this?
No.
No. Okay.
Didn't know there was one.
Fair enough. We have some very nice business cards with QR codes now, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely point you in that direction for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll move to receive. And I'll move that the presentation be referred to the Brant Safe Streets program. So Michael and Rick Knapp can have a good look at this. And I'd like to speak to that motion if I get a seconder.
Seconder by Councillor Oakley. Go ahead, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, and what Councillor Oakley said is yeah, we could have gone that approach, just referred to Brant Safe Streets, but I given the nature and the complexity of the situation, it wasn't they're speeding in front of my road, referred to Brant Safe Streets. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, so I thought it would be a lot more effective, better if there was a live presentation. So that's why Ray came in today and made that presentation. But like you said, I would like to refer to the people that know about this best.
Okay. Any discussion regarding the motion to receive and refer to Brant Safe Streets? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Thank you for your time, Ray, and that will be forwarded on to Brant Safe Streets, and they will be in contact for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 4.4, Paul Belanger on behalf of Cedarview Church regarding the sidewalk plowing. Paul, come on up. Again, if you could state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Belanger. I'm representing Cedarview Church. It's at 20 Cedarview Street here in Paris. We are located between Rest Acres Road and Cedar Street, with King George being at the side of our building. And that's the sidewalk that we're talking about today. Earlier in the year, we were given a notice that we had 24 hours to clear some snow for the sidewalk. I believe that sidewalk was put in 2019. We were actually completely unaware that we were responsible for the sidewalk. We really forgot that it even existed because it's a couple hundred feet from our building. So we took the responsibility. We had it cleared out. It was approximately 200 feet long. And it cost us approximately $350 to have that cleared out. We've had it done a couple of times since then. And again, at a fee from our snow plowing company, it was $350 each time they did it. So what I'm here today is to hopefully get an exemption from snow plowing that section of sidewalk, as if we were to continue doing that for the whole entire winter season, it would put a real financial burden on our church. We really couldn't afford to do that. I mean, if we have to, we will figure it out, but it would put a real financial strain on our finances. The sidewalk itself, it's approximately 200 feet from the church. We don't have any driveways that cross it. We don't have any walkways that connect to it. We don't use that sidewalk for any reason. It's strictly there for the public to use. But in saying that, if we are responsible for clearing that sidewalk, we wouldn't just be responsible for the snowfall that falls on it, because that sidewalk is only 2 feet off King George. We would also be responsible for cleaning off 2 lanes of when the snowplow comes by, that would be dumping all the salt, the snow, the slush. We would be responsible for that too. And again, in saying that, I have read the bylaws. We do understand that we are responsible. That sidewalk is on our property. We understand that, but again, we're hoping for the exemption based on the fact that it would put a real financial strain on our finances to do that, because we do want to keep it clean. We do want to be a good representative of Paris and keep it clean. We do know that on the side of Rest Acres Road, it is cleaned by the county. Across the street along the cemetery, it's cleaned by the county. I don't know what it would cost to, when you clean along Rest Acres, to make a quick left turn, go down a couple hundred feet and clean that off. I don't know if that's the answer, or I know it would probably be significantly less to do that than for us to be paying $350 every time it snowed or the snowplow came by. Anyway, that's basically what I came for. If you have any questions.
Questions from committee? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's more of a question to staff in relation to this, so I'm sure Greg can answer the question. There is another church just up the way on King Edward Street. Do they have the same problem? Are we expecting them to remove the snow that we dump on there with our snowplow? Or do they have an exemption already?
Through the chair, to my knowledge, we don't exempt any businesses or residents. I don't believe it's part of our plan. I would have to look at the snowplow map. I wasn't prepared for this to come forward today. If we do have some snow routes that will pass houses, like school routes and stuff, but they're pre-amalgamation routes that were developed, and then we've added some over the years if they've identified as a school route or a special circumstance. So no, I'll have to look into the church question, and I'll have to look up the address, but to my knowledge, there's no exemptions.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley?
What is our criteria for determining whether to plow snow on the sidewalks appropriately or not? For example, on West Acre Road.
So, trying to find the history of why the snow routes are the way they are right now it's been kind of hard for me because some of these snow routes go back more than 20 years. Okay, so what we do though, currently, if it's a municipally owned property or a pathway, something that we develop that's away from a property like Rest Acres Road, we have that multi-use path there. That would become our responsibility. If we build a new government building, a municipal building, that would be our responsibility. A community center, that would be our responsibility.
Councillor Miller?
Yeah, there's a whole, there's a lot in this. But I'm gonna ask Greg through you, Mr. Chair, if I could. Greg, so right now, I think can you, I don't know if you know the bylaw or not, or clear on that. Is it 24 hours that they got a homeowner, for example, has to have the snow in front of their driveway or the sidewalk cleared off?
Through the chair, that is correct. It's 24 hours once the snow has stopped falling, then the resident or business owner must have it cleared.
Okay, so we got 24 hours once the snow stops falling. Okay, I should know that. I apologize. Now, through Mr. Chair to Greg, you say businesses or residences. I suspect we'll have to do a little deeper dive on this because the presenter is not a business or a residence. He's institutional. He's a church, and I'm just wondering how we treat Penmarvian. Do we treat them the same? Do we treat other churches the same? I don't think this is the only church in the county that has this issue. So I'll wait till we get to the resolution. But okay, this is an interesting dilemma. So thank you.
Greg?
Through the chair, I would like to add one thing, especially to the delegation. One thing that we do offer to our residents, and I do have empathy for outside sidewalk that we call it. So in a normal snowfall, when you get a little skiff, it's very easy to go out and clean it. But if we get 6 inches of snow, we come down, clear the 4 lanes like the gentleman has said here, and we place snow on the sidewalk. The roads department will return and clean that. We don't expect people to dig out big, heavy windrows, and we have done that in the past. Sometimes people just clear it because it wasn't as bad for them, but other times people do reach out to us, whether they're a business or a homeowner or a property owner, and they'll say, "Can you come and have a look at our sidewalk? The plow has placed a lot of snow here." One of the supervisors will go by, then he'll call up the trackless operator, and then we'll get to it the next day after we've completed our responsibilities.
Okay. Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think knowing this and having this delegation come now halfway through October, we now know this is an issue or it's a concern. I sit on the accessibility committee, and I'll tell you that it's now a populated area near his church. And if somebody decides to get bundled up on a Sunday morning to try to get to church in a wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, and it's just a dead stop because nobody plowed that piece, it's not going to be a good day for the county and for the church or for the person that's sitting in the wheelchair. So I think we now have from the middle of October to the snowfall, which could be any minute or it could be 2 months from now. But we have to move on this now so that things are in place for the snowfall, because we can't be promoting accessibility and say we're an accessible county and then have big 200-yard pieces of our sidewalks not cleared because we didn't get it figured out in time for the snowfall. So I think the middle of October is plenty of time to find an answer. Thank you.
Councillor Oakley?
I do have a motion prepared when we're finished discussion.
Anybody else with questions on this? Councillor Oakley, I'll go back to you.
I'd like to move to receive his information and refer to the roads department to deliver or report for the winter season on a comprehensive look at approaching or snow clearing of our sidewalks and accessibility, particularly around high traffic areas like King Edward Street.
Okay. Seconder to that? Councillor Bell? Questions to that? Councillor Miller?
Yeah, I think I'm glad I would refer it to staff as well. Because I'd like to see all the information put together. You know, starting from what are the requirements that the bylaws say. How much of should it be just on 4 lanes? We may change our policy there where we have to do it because, like I said earlier, it's not just Cedarview Church that's facing this problem. There's many other institutions which they don't have the capacity to get that done. It can be quite onerous for certain institutions. So I support the resolution, and I hope maybe we can have a clear policy on that.
Any other questions to it? Councillor Garneau?
Thank you. If I could just ask any staff recommendations that come forward are costed, please.
Sorry?
That any staff recommendations would be costed?
Yep.
Please.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley, back to you.
Just to motivate on my motion here, I've also received lots of quite a few calls from new business owners on Woodsley who newly have a sidewalk who now have to deal with the realities of being responsible for snow plowing. I've received lots of calls and emails last winter from not only seniors but also young parents with strollers dealing with all over in our county. People not clearing around the intersections. So I think a comprehensive look at this and our approach of how accessible we can get versus what the cost is going to be is really what I'd like to see out of this. So.
Okay. No other questions? We've got a motion on the table that's been seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Thank you for coming, Paul. Okay, that brings to a close our delegations for today. I thank them all. We'll move on to section 5, adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bell. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we will move on. Consent items, we've got a few of them in here. 7.1.1, which is RPT 0384-24, the appointment of an engineer for the Lowe's Amy Municipal Drain. Can I get a mover? Councillor Miller, Mayor Bailey. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.2, consent items to be received. Does anybody want any of them pulled? Seeing nobody, is anybody willing to move them all? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Miller, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Staff reports 8.1, we've already taken care of. 8.2, RPT-0415-23, B City, Canada. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Oakley. Questions on that report? Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a question for Megan. So this is great information, and it's an interesting topic to a lot of people within our community. I'm wondering, and obviously I support us moving this direction and accepting the designation and committing to the standards. Is there anything we can do at signage wise to show the community that we're supporting this initiative? I don't know whether it's like little bees in the parks or like, I don't know, but I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Megan?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, we can do some signage. We're working on strategies within our parks currently to naturalize some spaces and have some educational signage about naturalization as well as invasive species management works that we're doing and the values that these environmental features have and lend to our community. So this having advertising for Bee City will absolutely be incorporated into that in our public spaces.
Councillor House, okay. Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair to staff, I've been asked in the past by constituents who are concerned about pollinators about initiatives other cities have taken, such as No Mow May, allowing native flowering plants to be planted on boulevards. Can you comment on some of these initiatives and if they'd be helpful, harmful, if we should look into them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Great question. No Mow May, I would love to do as a nature lover. However, there are some balances that we have to find with maintenance of grass and turf specifically. So there is an actual health benefit for things like soccer fields and heavily used grass areas that do need to be mowed regularly, or else you can compromise the integrity of the actual plant. We are looking currently, and we've actually done a few sections in our parks this year to naturalize some spaces to reduce the mowing in areas that don't need to be mowed, as well as, introducing things like a 1 meter or a mower width trim on either side of trails rather than clearing the entire section, just to provide that environmental benefit. Also, it reduces our emissions. Because we're not running gas-powered mowers in those areas. There's major benefits on our operational budgets to look at opportunities to naturalize, reduce mowing. So as part of this Bee City Canada, it shows our dedication to look into opportunities and recognize us on a global scale, or especially a national one. And in regards to the boulevard plantings, I also am supportive of naturalization in boulevards. We do have to balance the public safety measures of that. There are areas where it may be appropriate, and there are areas that may not be appropriate, and we need to work internally with our operations departments to determine those, but we will bring those opportunities forward as they come and look for where they're most suitable and feasible to implement.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions and some comments. So my first question through you to Megan would be, so it's called Bee City, but I'm assuming that this would be an initiative that would incorporate the entire county as a whole, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It would be all of the county of Brant.
Okay. Having confirmed that, one thing that really jumped out at me was the only mention of agriculture throughout the document was in reference to industrialized agriculture, which I could go on for hours about my opinions on that particular term. And then there is some reference to food, sustainability, that kind of thing. So one of the things I would like to see if we are going to apply would be to incorporate maybe perhaps what some of the farms are doing in terms of pollinator health. So I know there's lots of farms who will have a fence line that is very hospitable to pollinators. There's some farmers that are cutting their grasses later, cutting their hay later. So there's a really big benefit to particularly pastures and grasslands that play a big role in pollinator health and population, that I think it would be a missed opportunity to also call out that as part of the efforts that we're doing towards pollinator health in the county.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Great point as well. We were very specific in our report to committee here that we didn't want, we want to be able to recognize the great things that are happening in our community, especially in the agricultural sector of our community, because it is so strong and large. This would give us a great opportunity, and we can look at things like our stewardship awards and things like that we're doing in other areas of community services and expanding into that area. So that additional recognition of someone being a good neighbor, someone being a good sustainable business operator. I think that there's a lot of good that we can look at, and this is essentially our first step to have that main guiding initiative to support some of these other smaller projects and recognition within the community. We wanted to be very specific as well, not to be restrictive or to create any rules that would impact agriculture, and just to let the businesses do their things, promote the benefits of supporting healthy pollinator initiatives, and look for those opportunities for people to get involved within our existing community.
Very good. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Megan. Megan, would you be the staff point person for this endeavor?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll say right up front, I didn't think I'd see this here. I'm glad I did. I've read about it in the paper, other municipalities, cities passing that. It is a very almost flippant attitude sometimes people bring towards this, but it's very serious. I think it was Einstein that said, you know, if the bees go extinct, the human species isn't going to be far behind. And we're seeing what they call the insectopolis, where we're losing approximately 2% of insect mass per year. Obviously, that can't go on forever, but I think people of my generation, they'll talk about how, you know, when you took a road trip, you'd have to stop every so often and wipe the bugs off your headlights, and we don't do that anymore. So clearly, there is an issue. What's the biggest problems? They say neonics are the biggest problem, followed by maybe loss of habitat and climate change. So, to Councillor Kyle's point, I think it's good if you can involve the agricultural community. I like the fact that, okay, we're not going to mandate they do this, this, and this, but I think when you look at it, at the numbers, it's beneficial to have as many as we can. And there's ways to involve large farms, large fields, whether you use pollinator strips or whatnot. So I would hope maybe somewhere down the road you think about the Ag Advisory Committee, maybe make a presentation to them in a year or two's time, and just get their input and see what we could do. So I love it. I think it's long overdue, and I hope we fully endorse it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, we do have a motion on the table that's seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to 8.3, RPT-0418-23. It's a cemeteries bylaw. Mover, Councillor Garneau, Councillor Coleman. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.4, RPT, quite fitting again, Mr. Mayor, it's October and we're talking about snow. 8.4, RPT-0434-23, permit and snow route parking modifications. Can I get a mover? Councillor Oakley, Councillor McAlpine. I'm not sure if any questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. (8.5) RPT-0382-23, the updated fees and charges bylaw for municipal consent permit fee. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, Councillor McAlpine. Questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and thank you to staff for redoing that. Okay. Okay, moving on to 8.6, RPT-0410-23, adoption of land acknowledgement. I believe Zach and Kayla, let's get it on the floor. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Kyle, I believe Zach and Kayla Kayla wants to talk to this.
Turn
that on. I'm just going to share a little bit of context just before we discuss the land acknowledgement report that may answer some questions if we do want to have a discussion. So a land acknowledgement is a way of recognizing and expressing gratitude to Indigenous land that we are on. For settlers, the act of performing a land acknowledgement is a very basic and fundamental step towards reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and settlers. An informed land acknowledgement is authentic, accurate, respectful, and spoken with heartfelt sincerity. Over the past 2 years in my role, I've been doing a lot of learning at conferences, workshops, and having a lot of conversations and partnership building to better understand the history of this land where we meet and the current cultures that live here. The land acknowledgement presented to you today has been developed over this time through discussions and input from Darren Winbanga, traditional knowledge and land use coordinator with the Department of Consultation and Accommodation from the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the land use officer Peter Graham and his colleagues from Six Nations of the Grand River. Our legal team has also reviewed the various iterations that we've had to the land acknowledgement as we've had these conversations. So it's gone back and forth quite a few times throughout the process in about 6 months since I wrote the initial land acknowledgement. So many municipalities and municipal councils have land acknowledgements. The Association of Municipalities Ontario has provided guidance to municipalities on the development of land acknowledgement statements, noting that opting for a more general statement is appropriate. And we've tried to balance that, and I've really looked at what other communities have done and spoken to them as well to get to this point. The language and the words chosen were carefully discussed, so there was a lot of back and forth and considered because there is a very complex history and ongoing discussions that we were trying to balance through this process. So I just want to encourage us all to really be open to ongoing learning and allow space to continue to transform and develop the land acknowledgement as we learn more together. So I know I've learned a lot throughout this process. And both the Mississaugas of New Credit and the Six Nations have offered training to everyone here to get a deeper understanding and a chance for thoughtful personal reflection when using the land acknowledgement. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kayla? Councillor Oakley.
Less than a question, more of a comment. I just think that this is something that's been sorely overdue. Since I've been on council, I've been whenever I'm traveling anywhere, I try to stop in at other municipal councils and just see how they do things. I was up in Trent Hills and saw that they did their own land acknowledgement with consultation with their local Indigenous groups. And I immediately reached out to our CAO, Allison, to be like, we need to do this, to find out that you've been working on it for months and doing a fantastic job consulting with the Mississaugas of the New Credits and Six Nations to get this done. So I just want to say it's fantastic that that this work is done. It's long overdue, and I'm happy to support it. And I'm also eager to undergo that training that they're offering. So thank you.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kayla. I echo Councillor Oakley's sentiments in that I'm really excited to see this finally come through. And I was really pleased to see the recommendation for the education piece too. If there's one thing that I think a lot of groups maybe get wrong or miss is that opportunity. You know, I could probably stand here and recite the University of Guelph's land acknowledgement because I've heard it so many times it just becomes robotic to them. I don't know that they even recognize what they're saying and what that means. So I think the education piece, and I like the idea of moving it around from council member to council member to share that at land acknowledgement through the meetings, I think is really a great idea. So very supportive.
Any other questions for Kayla? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we do have a motion on the table that has been seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that moves us on to section 9, which is committee reports and minutes. 9.1, Cemetery Advisory Committee Report. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, seconder. Councillor Coleman. Questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.2, Brant Connects Report. Mover, Councillor Miller. Seconder, Councillor Kyle. Questions on that report? Mayor Bailey.
Mr. Chair, maybe to Councillor Miller, when that committee was formed, was it formed as an ad hoc committee? Does it have an expiry date, or is it an ongoing committee?
There was no end date given when it was created. I think through the evolution of that committee, I think it has been determined to just keep that committee going until everybody in the county is hooked up to high speed.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
Item 2, demonstration of the connectivity guidebook for the county grant and reporting tool. I think we were going to have a demonstration. Obviously, it's not happening today because today's October 17th, but hopefully we can get that for the November one. I've been pushing for that because it's important, I think, for all members of council to know if you get a call from a resident wondering, I don't have high speed, when will I get it? This is a really good tool that our IT department has set up. So I want it to be shared so I don't have to answer everybody's emails and then respond directly to the residents across the county. So we'll work on that for November.
Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.3, Brant Heritage Committee report. Mover, Councillor Howes. Seconder, Councillor Oakley. Questions on this report? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The second line, which talks about the redevelopment at 3 and 7 Yeo Street, if that's the right way of pronouncing it. It's Yeo Street, okay. There's a bit of English and Canadian clashing. So, it's a very exciting prospect, and what surprised me is it hasn't hit the headlines anywhere in social media. Are we deliberately not advertising it? Because I think it's something that we need to get in front of pretty quickly. It is going to cause some consternation amongst people, and I think we need to be there ready to either give it, well, not necessarily support, but need to outline that we understand what's going to be built, that there are issues that may come forward, and to outline the process that the Patterson planning consultants are going to follow.
Councillor Howes, response?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. Right, I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Bell is saying. It's unusual that a developer shows the Heritage Committee their plans before getting to the Planning Committee. I believe that's unusual. It's not very often we see it anyway. And while we thanked them for like, I believe they were hoping to see some support and get some support on the record to assist them in their process going through the planning process. But our Heritage Committee, as noted here, had some interest in the property and weren't necessarily prepared to give it the green light that they may have been hoping for. So we did express our gratitude for them coming in early. I believe that we'll see it through the planning cycle soon, and at that point I hope we can be a little bit more public with those details. Certainly anyone who would look at the Heritage Advisory Committee agenda of last week would see those details. Yeah, that's, Councilor Bell's right. We do need to start to prepare for what may be coming on that property.
Thank you for that. Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, just to also comment on the second whereas clause there, which is I personally attended that Heritage meeting to specifically see the presentation from this developer, and I think it's a very exciting missing middle project, and I look forward to seeing it in the planning cycle.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving on to section 10. We got a few notices of motion here. We will start with 10.1, notice of motion for the Burford District Minor Hockey Association. Councillor Miller.
No comments, Mr. Chair. I think it's self-explanatory. It's just a series of unfortunate events that had to come down to a notice of motion, but there it is for council.
Okay. 10.2, notice of motion for the formation of a government relations committee. Councillor Kyle, do you wish to speak to it? Anything of it?
And yeah, no comments currently, Mr. Chair, but if anyone has questions prior to the meeting, feel free to let me know.
Okay. And then 10.3, notice of motion, support for Israel. Councillor Coleman, everybody received that?
This morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comment.
Okay. So I'm assuming we will see these all at our council meeting coming up at the end of the month. Appreciate that and appreciate the notice of motion, folks. Thank you. Communications, I don't see any. Nobody had anything for other business. Anybody have anything right now for other business? Seeing none, we will move in camera. Mayor Bailey, Councillor Oakley, all in favor? Opposed? 2 minutes, please. Okay, we are back in open session. There is nothing else on the agenda for today, so if nobody has anything for the betterment of the county, move to adjourn. Councillor Coleman, thank you.